So welcome to lecture number 17, 210 fluid mechanics. So in this lecture, we will continue the discussion that we were having yesterday on applying the differential equations of fluid mechanics for solving real problems. So let's quickly recap what we did yesterday. So we started with the application of the continuity as well as the Navier-Stokes equation for solving certain problems. The first one we picked up was the Kuwait problems between two parallel plates where the top plate was shear driven. So rather than applying a pressure difference to drive the flow, we apply a constant velocity on the top plate, and that shear from the top drives the flow inside the two plates. So we applied the continuity and the momentum equation, the Navier-Stokes equation, and then from there we got a linear velocity profile. Upon applying the boundary conditions at the lower and the top plate, we found out the constants and hence the complete velocity flow profile. Okay, so that was the first problem we solved, the Kuwait problem. The next one was the same geometry, but instead we had a pressure driven flow between the plates. Because in this case, we applied a P1 greater than P2, and that resulted in the flow, which we were still working on. Okay, so we'll continue. So I'll just quickly recap this. So we applied the continuity equation. Everything was very similar to the case number 1. So the the velocity, the x velocity in this case is simply a function of u, that is the plate distance from the plate. And then upon applying the Navier-Stokes equation, in this case we had a dp by dx, that is we have a pressure gradient, and upon applying the Navier-Stokes equation in the y direction, we saw that this pressure gradient is simply the pressure is simply a function of x. So this del p by del x became a dp by dx. So finally we had this equation where mu mu d2u by dy2 was equal to dp by dx, which is equal to a constant. And the reason we gave was because left hand side in this equality is simply a function of y, because we know that mu is a constant and our u velocity is simply a function of y. Dp by dx is simply a function of x because p is a pure function of x. So if two values are equal, where one is purely a function of y and one is purely a function of x, and x and y are independent, then this can only be possible if both of them are equal to some constant c. And the other thing we noticed was that since dp by dx is negative, because that is how we specified the conditions, so this c is less than 0, because the flow will happen from higher pressure to a lower pressure. So that is exactly where we stopped. So we'll continue the discussion from that point. So let me share I'll share my writing pad. Okay, so this is going to be lecture number 17. Okay, so we'll continue the discussion from where we stopped yesterday. Right. So this now we simply have to solve this equation. So let's do that. So instead of calling this a constant, this is a constant. That's okay. We'll call this p prime. Okay. It's much easier to write p prime rather than writing d to u by dp by dx again and again. Okay, so this is p prime upon mu times y, and then we integrate again. So our u becomes p prime by mu, and then we have a y square by 2 plus c1y plus c2. Okay, so that is that is our u velocity in this channel. Now remember, the way we defined our x and y coordinates was that at the bottom plate your y was equal to minus h, at the top plate y was equal to plus h. The thickness the thickness between the plates, or the distance between the plates, was twice of h. Now we have two constants of integration, c1 and c2, so we can apply the boundary conditions. The first one is at y equal to minus h, our u is equal to 0. That's applying the no slip condition at the bottom plate. So let's do that. And the second boundary condition we have is in the top plate, that is at y equal to plus h, our u is again equal to 0, because we'll also apply the no slip condition on the top plate. Okay, so from 1 and 2, now we can solve for c1 and c2. So I can add 1 and 2. So that will get rid of c1. So that gives me twice. So c2 is minus p prime upon 4 mu times h square. So simply I've added 1 and 2. Okay. And then I can subtract 1 from 2. So that gets rid of the h square term. So that's the same. And that gives me c1 is equal to 0. Okay. Because we get twice c1h is equal to 0. That means C1 is equal to 0. Okay, so these are the two constants of integration. So finally, we can substitute them back into our relation number 1 for the x velocity, that is u. Let's just copy this. Okay, and then our C1 was 0 and C2 was minus p prime by 4 mu times h square. So C1 is 0 and C2 is minus p prime by 4 mu times h square. That clear? So that's our relation for the just let me check if I've done it correctly. I think I made a mistake. So when we add 1 and 2, then we're supposed to get twice of C2 is equal to twice of this term that has an h square. That's this one. So that should give me p prime upon 2 mu. Okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. So that's what we should get. So I can simplify the expression. So u as a function of y is, let's write this p prime back as dp by dx. Then we have, let's take a negative sign common. We can take a 1 by a mu common. In fact, we can take h square by 2 mu common. So that's 1 minus y square upon h square. So that's our expression for the x velocity as a function of y coordinate. All right. So this is a parabolic relation, as we can see. So this u varies with y as a function of y squared. Right? And as we can see from this relation, now the reason I took a minus sign common out was because dp by dx is negative. We saw that. So then this coefficient outside the bracket becomes positive. So inside the bracket, we have 1 minus something where y goes from minus h to h. So that means at y equals to minus h, your u velocity is 0. You can see that. So 1 minus 1, that is 0. And at the center, that is at the center point between the plates, this becomes maximum because y is 0 there. So if I was to draw this profile, the flow profile, the velocity profile, then it will be something like this. So that's the kind of flow profile we'll get between two plates where the flow is driven because of pressure difference. Now we also know that the pressure is linear. dP by dx we saw yesterday was linear velocity profile. Okay, so based on that, we can also write this dP by dx. You can write dP by dx as P2 minus P1 upon L, where L is the length of the plate. It's a very long length, but still it's finite. Or you could write this as delta P upon L, because we would all we know is the pressure difference. How the pressure changes from P1 to P2 is dependent on the physics, the conservation laws, and that is what we saw yesterday. So we can also write this as delta P upon L, because it's easier to measure delta P and L. Okay, and the maximum velocity that is at the center, this we call U max. Again, it's very commonly used to specify the velocity. I mean, you specify the U max, and that's all you need to specify, because you know it's a parabolic profile. So U max can be calculated from this relation number A as you simply substitute y equal to you substitute y equal to 0, so that gives you minus delta P upon L times h square upon 2 mu. So that's your U max. Is that clear? Okay, so this kind of a velocity, this kind of a flow that is driven because of pressure difference has a name, and we call it the Poiseuille flow. So yesterday, the case number 1 we considered was called Couette flow. So it was the flow which was driven because of shear. It was a shear driven flow. And the case that we have considered today, case number 2, is Poiseuille flow, which is driven by pressure difference. We'll consider all other types of Poiseuille flows as well, but just keep this in mind. It's a very common word that we use, so we should understand what it means by Poiseuille flow. So it's named based on a scientist's name, Poiseuille. Okay, so let's work on an example, because we have been stating that in the differential analysis of flow, if I know the velocity profile and the pressure, if I know the velocity field and the pressure field, then everything else is known. There's nothing else to know. So that was the whole idea of writing the differential equations, or the differential relations of fluid mechanics, that if we can solve this, we can solve everything in fluid flow. So let's actually see how we can obtain everything else that is useful in a fluid mechanics problem from simply using the solution of these equations. So this is an example from the book. Okay, so this is based on application number 2, that is the Poiseuille flow problem that we just discussed. Because the first we have to compute the wall shear stress. Okay, so what is the shear stress on the wall? Now, when the fluid flows inside these two channels or the plates, what will happen is that there will be some friction that the plates will provide, and this friction will slow down the fluid, because you have to constantly maintain that pressure difference. And to maintain that pressure difference constantly, you have to have a pump that constantly maintains that pressure difference. So there is something that is resisting the flow of fluid between the channels, and that resistance is coming from the force of shear from the walls. So we'll have to find that wall shear stress. So this is our velocity profile. Now remember, shear stress was given as mu du by dy at the wall, that is at y equal to minus h. You can also put y equal to plus h, both are symmetric situations. So we'll call this tau wall, tau w. That is the wall shear stress at the bottom wall. Now that we have the u velocity profile, so we can easily find du by dy. So let's see what the profile was. So the profile was minus p prime h square by 2 mu. And then in the bracket, we had 1 minus y square upon h square. Okay, so we differentiate this. So the mu gets cancelled. This one will get cancelled with the mu inside the bracket. And then when we differentiate 1, we get a 0, and y square will give us a 2y. So we'll have a minus 2y upon h square coming from the brackets. And then this whole thing is at y equal to minus h. Okay, so we finally get a minus sign. So this 2 gets cancelled with the 2. H square gets cancelled with the h square. So we simply get a minus p prime h. This is minus dp by dx times h. Okay, so dp by dx is negative, so this becomes positive, and then you have h. So dp by dx is something we have, we can measure, because it's given to us what p1 and p2 are. So delta p is something that we can measure, and delta l is the length of the plates is also what we can measure, and h again is something that's given to us, the half distance between the plates. So using this, we can now find the wall shear stress. And using the wall shear stress, we can find the net force the fluid is applying on the wall. So we'll have to hold the walls, otherwise they will move to the right with the flow. And that is equal and opposite to the force the walls apply on the fluid. So we'll know how much pressure difference we have to maintain. So there's a relation between tau wall and dp by dx. Is that clear? So this is the force because of the fluid on the wall, and vice versa. Sometimes we also specify these things in terms of U max, okay, because U max is something you can easily specify. That's the centerline velocity. You'll see people using Umax to specify rather than using dp by dx. So you can simply write your dp by dx from this relation. You can write your dp by dx in terms of Umax. So the other thing we've been asked, this is number 2, that's the stream function. So the first question is, does the stream function exist? So the condition for the existence of the stream function is that, one, the flow should be two-dimensional, which is the case in this case, it's a 2D flow, and the other, the continuity equation has to be satisfied. And this is an incompressible flow where the continuity equation is satisfied. So that means that a stream function exists. And then to find the stream function, again, it's very easy. I won't do it for you, but you know the stream function is defined in such a way so that u is del psi by del y and v is del psi by del x with a minus sign. Now v is 0 and u is given as a parabolic relation in y. So u is a pure function of y, and if your v is 0, then that means that psi is simply a function of y. So you can solve it to get psi, and you will you'll get a cubic in y because u already is a function of y squared. So when you integrate that further, you get a y cube. I'll just write the relation. So that's the function we get for the stream function. Right? So we can also, we just saw that we can find the stream function as well. So next is we have to find the vorticity. Again, we're talking about vorticity in the z direction. So vorticity is del v, I mean, it's just the curl of velocity so we see that the magnitude of vorticity, which is omega, is del v by del x minus del u by del y. Now this is 0 because v is 0 in this case, and u as a function of y is already given. It's a parabolic function. So when you do a du by dy, that gives you a linear function in y, that is twice u max y upon h squared. Okay, so we can see that in this case the vorticity is non-zero in the complete channel, except at the center. Everywhere else the vorticity is non-zero. And that makes sense because if you remember, when I talked about irrotational flows, I mentioned that the flow is irrotational in the region where the viscous effects are negligible. But in this case, I mean, the viscous effects are significant everywhere because you have layers slipping over each other at I mean, the layers, one layer applying shear on the other in the complete flow field, in the complete flow region. It's only at the center where there is no gradient in the x velocity because it becomes flat instantaneously at the center. So in that place, there is no rotation. Otherwise, there is rotation everywhere. So vorticity is non-zero in the complete region in this Poiseuille flow situation. Okay. The next problem, the next part is find the velocity potential. Okay, so that's a trick question because velocity potential only exists if the flow is irrotational, but the flow in this case is rotational. So this is not defined. Okay, the curl of velocity is not zero, so we cannot define a velocity potential in this case. And the last part is to find the average velocity. And we also discussed earlier that the way we define the average velocity is if you have the plates like this, then average velocity is defined as V average, let's say U average, is the flow rate upon the area, cross-sectional area. Okay, so it's a 2D situation. So the area is simply just the length, that is of the 2h. Now we don't need this figure. So this Q, the flow velocity is not uniform. It is changing as a function of y. So we have to integrate. So we have to integrate the x velocity u, and then this has to be integrated as a function of cross-sectional area. But in this case, it's simply a line. So u times dy. And this integral happens from y equal to minus h to y equal to plus h. So that will give us the flow rate. So you may see that the units are not correct. It's meter square per second, but there is there's a depth as well. But since it's a 2D situation, so that depth is taken as unit length. Okay. And then you have to divide this by the area to get the average velocity. So u average is integral u dy, and then that is 1 upon twice of h. Again, the width w is constant. You can call it 1 or w. I mean, it's actually not 1. It is very long. We discussed. We said that in the beginning as an assumption that it's extremely wide plate. So the effect of z is gone. So you can call it w, and the w will cancel out from the dA term in the integral as well as the 1 by w term from the 1 by a. So this is what we get as the average velocity. Again, the u velocity profile is known. We know u as a function of y. It's a parabolic function. So we can integrate that and find the average velocity. So if I do that, then the average velocity will come out to be 2/3 of the u max. Okay, so we had a parabolic velocity profile between the plates where this was u max. So the average is 2/3 of that. All right. So that's the end of the discussion on Poiseuille flow between two parallel plates. Are there any questions on this? Okay, so we are almost done with the discussion, and I will stop here. There are a couple of other cases that are discussed in the book, but what I'll do is I will give you those as exercise problems for you to practice by yourself. I will just mention those problems, and then you can do it yourself. So we'll call it problem number 3 is Poiseuille flow in a pipe. So it's Poisson flow in a pipe of circular cross section. So basically you have a pipe, not plates this time. And you again have P1 greater than P2, and that will result in the flow to happen. So now it's a 3D flow, it's not just 2D flow. Now you have to figure out the flow profile. So that is U as a function of R and theta and Z. So what you see here is that, I mean, it's a cylindrical, it's a cylinder. A pipe is a cylinder, so you can use your cylindrical coordinate system. Okay, so use cylindrical coordinates. That will make your life much easier. Okay, so in this case, the continuity equation and the flow equations are slightly different. So if you go at the appendix in the book, you will see that the continuity and the sorry, the continuity and the velocity, the momentum equations are given. So let's write them. So these are for cylindrical coordinates. So the continuity equation is, I mean, we already have discussed that, but I'll write it again. Okay, so this is the continuity equation and the Navier-Stokes equation. So again, we'll have Navier-Stokes equation in three different components. So the first one is for the Z in the Z direction. Okay, so this is the Z direction Navier-Stokes equation. Then we also have the theta direction. That's a bit more complicated. Again, we did not derive this, but the similar ideas that we had used can be used to derive this in cylindrical coordinates. It's a bit more complicated than Cartesian coordinates, and this operator v dot grad is defined as And the Laplacian operator is 1 by r del by del r of r del by del r. Then we have 1 by r squared del 2 by del theta 2, and then we have del 2 by del z2. Right, so I've simply copied these from the appendix in the book. It's important because, so in case it's required, I will give you these in the exam if there's any need. You don't need to derive that yourself, but you can derive it. You have all the information that you require. You have all the knowledge that you require to derive these equations yourself. Okay, but I don't expect you to do that as a part of this course. Okay, so these are the Navier-Stokes equations. Now, for this case that we are talking about, that is flow inside the circular cross-section pipe, you have to apply the continuity equation first. Again, very similar ideas. Now, you know that the flow will only be in the z direction. There will be no r direction flow. So r is this radial coordinate, or there is no theta which is perpendicular to this r vector in the theta direction. So the flow is simply in the axial direction. So it's only Vz that exists. There is no V theta or Vr, and also Vz is simply a function of r. That is what you will get from the continuity equation. So Vz is not a function of theta and not a function of z. Okay, so what we get is basically Vz is simply a function of r. And then you have to solve the Navier-Stokes equation. Again, very similar ideas. Okay, I can quickly discuss this with you. So in the theta direction, it is extremely trivial, except that we get del p by del theta is 0. Similarly, as to what we got for the Navier-Stokes equation in the y direction for the Poiseuille flow situation. So what we basically get is dp by del p by del z is dp by dz. So pressure varies linearly in the z direction, like it happened in the previous case. Okay, and from this z direction Navier-Stokes equation, you only have this term and this term remaining. Everything else becomes zero, right? So when you solve this, you will end up getting a parabolic relation again. You will get a relation where your Vz so you can see that it is similar to what we got earlier. It's parabolic in r, small r. So at small r equal to 0, that is at the center of the plate, you get the maximum axial velocity, and at a small r equal to 0, that is that is sorry, at small r equal to 0, yeah, that's the center, sorry, that's right. And at small r equal to capital R, that is the surface of this pipe, you get Vz equal to 0. That's the no slip condition. So that is satisfied. So I've applied, I've simply written the final solution. You can derive these things yourself. Okay. In many cases, this is also known as the Hagen-Poiseuille flow relation. Okay. Hagen and Poiseuille work together on this on this pipe flow situation. So we call it the Hagen-Poiseuille flow. Okay, so we will now stop here, and I urge you to please try this yourself. It's slightly different from mathematically from what we did in the parallel plates. So do mathematically practice this, but I'll give you this, give this to you as a problem in the problem sheet. along with another problem, which is again very common. So the other problem that we have, number 4, is flow between two cylinders. Okay, so you have a cylinder, you have another one. So it's like it's like a journal bearing. So you have the center cylinder, let's say, rotating. It's like a shaft that's rotating, and the shaft is housed inside another cylinder, and between them you fill some fluid like an oil, a lubricant. So you want the shaft to rotate without moving too much, and just slightly, there's a very small thickness that's filled with oil, and then outside it you have another cylinder which is stationary, which is mounted somewhere, so that the shaft cannot just move freely. It's maintained in that position. So this is a very common situation. So in this case, if you consider this as a 2D flow, there is no z direction that is interesting. The only thing that's interesting is since the center cylinder is rotating, so you will get a velocity profile which will be having some velocity at the surface and then 0 here. So you have to see how it varies, something like this. Okay, you can have the other way around. You can have the center one fixed. You can have the outside one rotating. That is also possible. So that will give you some other relation for the velocity profile. So in this case, the velocity is v theta is a function of r. Okay, so I'll give this to you as a problem to try yourself using the continuity and the Navier-Stokes equations in the cylindrical coordinates. Okay, so that's the end of this chapter, and from the next week we'll start talking about ideas of dimensionality and similarity. Okay, so I'll stop the recording here, and if we have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.